Bikers destroy farmer's stand, not knowing his family's legacy. Frank Barrett wiped the sweat from his brow as he arranged the fresh produce on the wooden shelves of his roadside stand. The sun had just begun to peek over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the rolling fields of his family's farm. This land had been in the Barrett lineage for over a century, passed down from generation to generation. Frank took great pride in carrying on the tradition, providing the community with the fruits of his labor. As he finished setting up for the day, he stepped back to admire his work. Baskets overflowed with ripe tomatoes, crisp lettuce, and vibrant bell peppers. Crates of juicy peaches and plump strawberries sat beside jars of homemade jams and preserves. The stand was more than just a place of business for Frank, it was a symbol of perseverance, tradition, and the values that held the community together. The locals relied on Frank's fresh crops, and many saw him as the heart of the town. They would stop by not only to purchase produce but also to share stories, seek advice, or simply enjoy a friendly conversation. Frank greeted each customer with a warm smile and a genuine interest in their lives. As the morning wore on, a steady stream of regulars visited the stand. Mrs. Johnson, the elementary school teacher, selected a basket of apples for her students. Mr. Thompson, the owner of the local diner, picked up a crate of potatoes for his famous homemade fries. Frank chatted with them, catching up on the latest news and sharing a laugh or two. Little did Frank know that his peaceful routine was about to be shattered. In the distance, the roar of motorcycle engines grew louder, a harbinger of the chaos that was about to descend upon his quiet corner of the world. The Steel Reapers, a notorious biker gang, were heading straight for Frank's stand, unaware of the legacy and strength that lay behind the humble farmer and his family. The Steel Reapers tore down the country road, their motorcycles kicking up clouds of dust in their wake. The gang was led by Dax Mitchell, a burly man with a rugged beard and eyes that gleamed with a dangerous intensity. Dax reveled in the feeling of power that came with leading the gang, the rush of adrenaline that coursed through his veins as they wreaked havoc wherever they went. As they approached Frank's roadside stand, Dax signaled for the gang to slow down. A wicked grin spread across his face as he surveyed the humble setup. To him, Frank was nothing more than an old farmer, insignificant and powerless. The stand was ripe for destruction, a fleeting moment of entertainment for him and his gang. The Steel Reapers pulled up to the stand, their engines idling with a menacing growl. Frank looked up from his work, a flicker of unease crossing his weathered face as he took in the sight of the leather-clad bikers. He set down the basket of tomatoes he had been arranging and stepped forward, his stance firm and his gaze unwavering. "Good morning," Frank said, his voice calm and steady. "Is there something I can help you with?" Dax laughed, a harsh and grating sound that sent a chill down Frank's spine. "Help us?" "No, old man. We're here to help ourselves." With that, the gang members dismounted their bikes and swarmed the stand. They laughed and jeered as they kicked over crates, smashed produce, and vandalized the carefully arranged displays. Frank watched in horror as his hard work was reduced to a pile of broken crates and ruined crops. As quickly as they had arrived, the Steel Reapers mounted their bikes and sped off, leaving behind a trail of destruction and the echoes of their laughter. Frank stood amidst the wreckage, his heart heavy with the realization that the gang had no idea of the true legacy that ran through his family's veins. Frank's family was no ordinary family. Their legacy was rooted in strength, honor, and sacrifice. Frank's father, Colonel Robert Barrett, had been a highly decorated military leader, known for his unwavering courage and strategic brilliance on the battlefield. He had instilled in his children the values of integrity, resilience, and a deep sense of duty to their community. Frank's brother, Sheriff Tom Barrett, had followed in their father's footsteps, dedicating his life to upholding the law and protecting the citizens of the county. He was a respected figure, known for his fair and just approach to law enforcement. The people trusted him to keep their town safe, and he took that responsibility seriously. And then there was Frank's daughter, Olivia Barrett. She was a rising force in the state government, a passionate advocate for justice and equality. Olivia had inherited her grandfather's determination and her father's compassion. She worked tirelessly to ensure that the voices of the people were heard and that those in power were held accountable for their actions. As Frank surveyed the damage to his stand, he couldn't help but feel a sense of anger and frustration. He had poured his heart and soul into this business, and to see it destroyed so callously was a blow to his very being. But even in the face of this setback, Frank knew that he had the strength of his family behind him. Word of the attack spread quickly through the town. The people were outraged that someone would dare to target Frank, a man who had given so much to the community. They rallied around him, offering their support and assistance in rebuilding the stand. The Steel Reapers, however, remained oblivious to the storm that was brewing. They continued their rampage through the countryside, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. But little did they know that the town, led by the Barrett family, was about to unite in a force much greater than they ever anticipated. The gang had ignited a fire, and it was about to engulf them. As the news of the attack on Frank's stand spread, the entire town mobilized in support of their beloved farmer. Local businesses offered their resources to help rebuild the stand, donating lumber, paint, and tools. The high school students volunteered their time to clear the debris and salvage what they could from the ruined produce. The community center became a hub of activity as people gathered to plan and coordinate their efforts. Sheriff Tom Barrett wasted no time in launching an investigation into the attack. He gathered eyewitness accounts and collected evidence from the scene. Tom knew that the Steel Reapers were a dangerous gang, but he also knew that his brother was not one to back down from a fight. He vowed to bring the perpetrators to justice and ensure that they faced the full consequences of their actions. Olivia Barrett, upon hearing about the incident, immediately set in motion a plan to bring the gang's actions to the attention of the state authorities. She reached out to her contacts in the capital, urging them to take swift action against the Steel Reapers. Olivia knew that the gang's behavior was not only a threat to her family but also to the safety and well-being of communities across the state. As the town worked tirelessly to rebuild Frank's stand, the Steel Reapers continued their rampage, oblivious to the forces that were aligning against them. Dax Mitchell, their leader, reveled in the chaos and destruction, feeling invincible and untouchable. But unbeknownst to the gang, their actions had set in motion a chain of events that would lead to their downfall. The Barrett family legacy, rooted in strength, honor, and sacrifice, was about to collide with the lawless brutality of the Steel Reapers. The gang was about to learn that true power didn't come from destruction but from the unbreakable bonds of a community united in the face of adversity. A week had passed since the attack on Frank's stand, and the town was abuzz with activity. The rebuilt stand stood proudly, a testament to the community's resilience and unity. Frank, overwhelmed by the outpouring of support, found himself working alongside his neighbors, forging even stronger bonds as they painted, hammered, and laughed together. Sheriff Tom Barrett's investigation was in full swing. He had tracked down several witnesses who had seen the Steel Reapers in the area on the day of the attack. Tom compiled a detailed report, complete with descriptions of the gang members and their motorcycles. He shared the information with law enforcement agencies across the state, determined to cast a wide net and bring the gang to justice. Olivia Barrett, meanwhile, had been working tirelessly behind the scenes. She had called in favors, leveraged her connections, and lobbied for the state to take action against the Steel Reapers. Olivia's efforts had caught the attention of the governor, who pledged his full support in bringing the gang to justice. As the Barrett family worked on multiple fronts, the Steel Reapers continued their reign of terror, unaware of the storm that was gathering on the horizon. Dax Mitchell, drunk on power and adrenaline, pushed his gang to take even greater risks, relishing in the fear they instilled in the communities they terrorized. But even within the gang, cracks began to appear. Some members, uneasy with the escalating violence, started to question Dax's leadership. They whispered among themselves, wondering if they had gone too far, if the price of their actions would be too high. In the town, the newly rebuilt stand opened its doors, greeted by a joyous and emotional crowd. Frank, surrounded by his family and friends, cut the ribbon, signaling a new beginning. As he looked out at the sea of faces, he knew that the Steel Reapers had underestimated the strength and resilience of his community. They had no idea what was coming for them. As the town celebrated the reopening of Frank's stand, Sheriff Tom Barrett received a break in his investigation. An anonymous tip led him to a biker bar on the outskirts of town, known to be a frequent haunt of the Steel Reapers. Tom assembled a task force, comprised of his most trusted deputies and officers from neighboring counties, and prepared to confront the gang. Under the cover of darkness, the task force descended upon the bar. They burst through the doors, weapons drawn, and quickly secured the premises. Dax Mitchell, caught off guard, attempted to flee but found himself cornered by Tom and his men. The other gang members, realizing the futility of resistance, raised their hands in surrender. As Dax was handcuffed and led away, Tom couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. He had promised to bring the perpetrators to justice, and he had delivered on that promise. The arrest of the Steel Reapers' leader was a significant victory, but Tom knew that the battle was far from over. News of Dax's arrest spread like wildfire, reaching Frank and his family. Olivia, who had been instrumental in mobilizing the state's resources, felt a surge of pride in her uncle's accomplishment. She knew that the arrest was just the beginning and that there was still work to be done to ensure that the gang faced the full consequences of their actions. Back at the stand, Frank found himself reflecting on the events of the past week. He marveled at the way his community had come together, united in their support for him and their determination to stand up to the gang. The rebuilding of the stand had not only restored his livelihood but had also reinforced the bonds that held the town together. As the sun began to set, Frank looked out over his fields, the golden light casting a warm glow on the crops that he had nurtured with his own hands. He knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but with his family and his community by his side, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. In the days following Dax Mitchell's arrest, the Steel Reapers found themselves in disarray. With their leader behind bars, the remaining members struggled to maintain their grip on power. Some, disillusioned by Dax's reckless leadership, began to question their loyalty to the gang. Among them was Lucas, a young man who had joined the Steel Reapers seeking a sense of belonging. As he watched the gang crumble around him, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that he had made a terrible mistake. He thought back to the destruction they had caused at Frank's stand, the look of devastation on the old farmer's face, and felt a pang of guilt. Lucas made a decision. He approached Sheriff Tom Barrett, offering to provide information on the gang's activities in exchange for leniency. Tom, recognizing the opportunity to strike a decisive blow against the Steel Reapers, agreed to work with Lucas. Armed with inside knowledge, Tom and his team launched a series of raids on the gang's hideouts. They seized weapons, drugs, and stolen property, effectively crippling the Steel Reapers' operations. The arrests of key members sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld, sending a clear message that the gang's reign of terror was coming to an end. As the Steel Reapers unraveled, the town continued to rally around Frank and his family. Olivia, using her political influence, ensured that the gang members faced the full weight of the law. She worked tirelessly to secure harsh sentences for those who had terrorized the community, sending a strong message that such behavior would not be tolerated. Frank, for his part, found solace in the simple act of tending to his crops. He rose each morning, greeted by the sight of his thriving fields and the bustling activity at his stand. The support of his community had not only helped him rebuild but had also given him a renewed sense of purpose. As the town slowly returned to normalcy, Frank couldn't help but reflect on the power of unity. The Steel Reapers had sought to tear them apart, but instead, they had only succeeded in bringing the community closer together. Weeks turned into months, and the town settled into a new rhythm. The Steel Reapers, once a looming threat, had been reduced to a cautionary tale, their members scattered and their power dismantled. The community, having weathered the storm, emerged stronger and more united than ever before. Frank's stand thrived, becoming not just a place to buy fresh produce but also a symbol of the town's resilience. People would gather there, sharing stories and laughter, forging new friendships and strengthening old ones. Frank, ever the gracious host, welcomed them all with open arms. Sheriff Tom Barrett, hailed as a hero for his role in bringing down the gang, found himself the recipient of numerous accolades and awards. He accepted them with humility, always quick to credit the bravery and dedication of his team. Tom knew that the true reward lay in the safety and security of the community he had sworn to protect. Olivia Barrett, her star rising in the political arena, used her platform to advocate for greater resources for rural communities. She fought for programs that would support small businesses, improve infrastructure, and create opportunities for the next generation. Olivia's passion and commitment earned her the respect and admiration of her constituents. As for Lucas, the former Steel Reaper who had turned informant, he found himself at a crossroads. With the gang dismantled and his past catching up with him, he knew that he needed to make a change. With the support of Sheriff Tom and the community, Lucas enrolled in a vocational program, determined to build a new life for himself. The town, once a quiet and unassuming place, had become a beacon of hope and resilience. The story of Frank's stand and the community's triumph over the Steel Reapers spread far and wide, inspiring others to stand up against injustice and fight for what was right. And so, life went on in the town, the scars of the past slowly healing, and the seeds of a brighter future taking root. The Steel Reapers were gone, but the lessons they had taught would never be forgotten. As the months passed, the town continued to thrive, the memories of the Steel Reapers fading into the background. Frank's stand had become a local institution, a gathering place for the community to come together and celebrate the simple joys of life. Frank, now a beloved figure, found himself at the center of it all, his warmth and generosity touching the lives of all who knew him. One day, as Frank was tending to his crops, he received a surprise visitor. Lucas, the former Steel Reaper, approached him, hat in hand, his eyes filled with remorse. Frank, always one to see the best in people, welcomed him with a smile. Lucas poured out his heart, expressing his deep regret for the part he had played in the attack on Frank's stand. He spoke of the changes he had made in his life, the hard work he had put in to turn things around. Frank listened intently, his heart swelling with compassion. In a moment of profound grace, Frank extended his hand to Lucas, offering not just forgiveness but also friendship. He saw in the young man a kindred spirit, someone who had stumbled but was determined to make things right. Frank invited Lucas to work alongside him at the stand, to learn the value of honest labor and the power of second chances. As Lucas settled into his new role, he found himself embraced by the community. People who had once seen him as a threat now welcomed him as one of their own. Lucas marveled at the transformative power of forgiveness and the strength of a community that could find it in their hearts to give him a chance. The town, once a place of fear and uncertainty, had become a model of redemption and hope. The story of Frank's stand, of the community's triumph over adversity, continued to inspire others, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. And so, as the sun set over the fields, casting a golden glow on the town, Frank and Lucas worked side by side, their laughter carrying on the gentle breeze. The stand had become more than just a place of business, it was a symbol of the unbreakable bonds that held the community together, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope and redemption could always be found. As the years passed, the town continued to flourish, the lessons of the past forever etched in the hearts of its people. Frank's stand remained at the center of it all, a beacon of hope and a testament to the power of forgiveness and unity. Sheriff Tom Barrett, now a seasoned lawman, had taken on the role of mentor, guiding a new generation of officers in the ways of justice and compassion. He taught them that true strength lay not in the force of their arms but in the courage of their convictions and the depth of their empathy. Olivia Barrett, now a respected figure in the state capitol, continued to fight for the rights and well-being of rural communities. She championed policies that invested in education, healthcare, and economic development, ensuring that the voices of the people were always heard. Lucas, once a lost soul, had found his true calling in the fields alongside Frank. He had discovered a sense of purpose and belonging, his past transgressions forgiven but never forgotten. Lucas became a living embodiment of the power of second chances, inspiring others who had lost their way to seek redemption and forge a new path. As the town gathered for the annual Harvest Festival, a celebration of the bounty of the land and the strength of the community, Frank looked out over the sea of faces, his heart filled with gratitude. He saw in each smile, each laugh, each embrace, the unbreakable bonds that had carried them through the darkest of times. And as the music swelled and the dance began, Frank knew that the legacy of his family, the legacy of strength, honor, and sacrifice, would endure long after he was gone. For in the hearts of the people, in the very soul of the town, that legacy would live on, a shining beacon of hope and resilience in a world that so often seemed filled with darkness. The years had been kind to the town, the wounds of the past long since healed, but the memory of the Steel Reapers and the lessons they had taught never faded. Frank, now an old man, his hair silver and his face lined with the wisdom of a life well lived, still tended to his stand, the embodiment of a legacy that had endured for generations. One day, as Frank was sorting through a box of old photographs, he came across a picture of his father, Colonel Robert Barrett, in his military uniform. The image stirred something deep within him, a reminder of the values that had shaped his life and the lives of those around him. Frank gathered his family and friends, the very heart and soul of the community, and shared with them the story of his father's bravery, of the sacrifices he had made to protect the innocent and defend the weak. He spoke of the importance of standing up for what was right, even in the face of overwhelming odds. As the gathered crowd listened, their hearts swelled with pride and determination. They knew that the legacy of the Barrett family was not just a story of the past, but a call to action for the present and the future. In that moment, the town made a solemn vow. They pledged to honor the memory of Colonel Robert Barrett, to carry forward the values he had embodied, and to stand as a bulwark against injustice wherever it reared its head. And so, as the sun set on that fateful day, the town stood united, their resolve unshakable. They knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be challenges and obstacles to overcome. But they also knew that they had the strength, the courage, and the compassion to face whatever lay ahead. For in the heart of that small town, in the very spirit of its people, burned a flame that could never be extinguished, a light that would guide them through the darkest of nights and lead them to a brighter dawn. As the town embraced its newfound purpose, a sense of change began to ripple through the streets. The legacy of Colonel Robert Barrett, once a distant memory, now pulsed through the veins of the community, a living, breathing force that inspired acts of kindness and courage. In the face of this renewed spirit, the remnants of the Steel Reapers, those few who had eluded justice, found themselves at a crossroads. Some, like Lucas, had already chosen the path of redemption, turning their backs on their former lives and seeking to make amends. Others, however, clung stubbornly to their old ways, their hearts hardened by years of violence and cruelty. They saw the town's transformation as a threat, a challenge to their fading power. Among them was Jax, a former lieutenant of Dax Mitchell, a man whose soul had been poisoned by hatred and resentment. He rallied the remaining Steel Reapers, urging them to strike back against the town that had dared to stand against them. But as Jax and his followers descended upon the town, they found themselves facing not just a community, but a force of nature. The people of the town, armed with the strength of their convictions and the power of their unity, stood firm against the onslaught. Sheriff Tom Barrett, his badge gleaming in the sunlight, led the charge, his deputies at his side. Olivia Barrett, her words ringing with the clarity of truth, rallied the people, reminding them of the values they held dear. And Frank, the old farmer, stood tall amidst the chaos, his eyes blazing with a fire that had been kindled so long ago. He knew that this was the moment they had been preparing for, the moment when the legacy of his family would be put to the ultimate test. As the battle raged, the town fought not just for themselves, but for the memory of Colonel Robert Barrett, for the principles he had lived and died for. They fought for the future they knew they could build, a future of hope, of healing, and of endless possibility. In the end, it was not the strength of arms that won the day, but the strength of the human spirit. The Steel Reapers, faced with the unwavering resolve of the town, found their weapons and their hatred useless against the power of compassion and unity. Jax, his eyes wide with the realization of his defeat, fell to his knees before Sheriff Tom Barrett. In that moment, he saw not just the lawman, but the embodiment of a higher ideal, a beacon of justice and mercy. And then, in an act that would be remembered for generations, Tom reached out his hand to Jax, offering not condemnation, but a chance at redemption. He spoke of the path that Lucas had taken, of the power of forgiveness and the possibility of change. Jax, his heart heavy with the weight of his past, looked up at Tom, tears streaming down his face. In that moment, he saw a glimmer of hope, a chance to be something more than the monster he had become. As the people of the town watched, Jax took Tom's hand, rising to his feet as a man reborn. The remaining Steel Reapers, moved by the power of the moment, laid down their weapons and surrendered, ready to face the consequences of their actions and to begin the long journey toward redemption. And so, as the dust settled and the wounds began to heal, the town emerged from the crucible of conflict stronger than ever before. They had faced their darkest hour and emerged victorious, not through violence, but through the power of their shared humanity. Frank, his eyes shining with pride, looked out over the town he had called home for so long. He saw in the faces of his neighbors, his friends, and his family, the unbreakable bonds that had carried them through the storm. And he knew, with a certainty that came from the very depths of his soul, that the legacy of Colonel Robert Barrett, the legacy of strength, honor, and sacrifice, would endure long after he was gone, a shining beacon of hope and resilience in a world that so often seemed filled with darkness. Years later, as the town gathered to celebrate the life of Frank Barrett, the old farmer who had become the heart and soul of their community, they did so with hearts full of love and gratitude. Frank's stand, now a cherished landmark, had been passed down to Lucas, the man who had once been lost but had found his way through the power of forgiveness and second chances. Lucas, his eyes filled with tears, spoke of the man who had become a father to him, who had shown him the true meaning of compassion and grace. Sheriff Tom Barrett, his badge now worn by his own son, spoke of the lessons Frank had taught them all, of the strength that came from unity and the power of standing up for what was right. He spoke of the legacy of Colonel Robert Barrett, and how that legacy lived on in the hearts of every man, woman, and child who called the town their home. Olivia Barrett, now a leader in the state, her voice ringing with the passion of a life dedicated to service, spoke of the impact Frank had made, not just on their town, but on the world around them. She spoke of the ripples of change that had begun with a single act of kindness, and how those ripples had spread far and wide, touching countless lives. As the sun began to set on that day of remembrance, the town came together, their hands joined in a circle of love and solidarity. They knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be challenges and obstacles to overcome. But they also knew that they had the strength, the courage, and the compassion to face whatever lay ahead. For in the heart of that small town, in the very spirit of its people, burned a flame that could never be extinguished, a light that would guide them through the darkest of nights and lead them to a brighter dawn. And so, as the story of Frank Barrett and the town that had stood together against all odds passed into legend, the legacy of strength, honor, and sacrifice that had been born so long ago continued to burn brightly, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit and the unbreakable bonds of community.